you all very much for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Callum Johnston. I work in the food and drink team at SAC Consulting. I'm joined by my colleagues Kerry Ritchie and Diane Whittle in the background. And this is the third in the series of get-togethers with Appetite for Angus. Tonight's session is taking a look at telling your story. And if you joined us for our last session a few weeks ago, it was all about developing your story. And we heard some fantastic, really unique stories about your businesses and how you've effectively got to where you are today. So tonight, we're going to be looking at how to tell your story and what platforms and communication channels there are to do it. We are delighted to have two guest speakers with us tonight. We've got Susanna Pate from Jane Craigie Marketing, and we've also got Fiona Richmond, Head of Regional Food at Scotland Food and Drink.
Thank you, Callum. Evening all again. So last time we focused on developing your story, and tonight we're looking at telling your story and the different channels you can use to do that. So we're really lucky that we live in a social and digital age where actually you can sit at your kitchen table and reach thousands of people without spending very much money, if anything at all. So long gone are the days of big marketing budgets and needing to spend lots of money. So I was just going to touch on the various different channels that you can use to get your story out there and reach as many people as possible. So Callum, if you could pop on to the next slide. So starting with the media, I'm aware that a lot of you are very good at getting yourselves into the media. So some of what I say to this evening will be very familiar. But what I was going to touch on here is that the media, really, it's a two-way relationship. Often they are looking for stories as much as you're looking to get into the media. The local media is a really good place to start. The Courier, P&J are great supporters of local businesses. And it may be that you've got a news story, like we've just heard this evening. Maybe you've won an awards, which they may be hot on, or it may be something you've got to tell them about, or that you're developing a new product. What's really important is that it's not an advert. If you're trying to get a story in the media, it does need to be a story. So it's just finding what that story is behind it. And as well as the news stories, you can make a news story. So I've included Lizzie Gray's turkey story here on the right. And she's been very clever and suggested that she can keep turkeys for customers after Christmas so that they can wait until they are together with their families to celebrate. So it works two ways. She's got some wonderful exposure, but it's a twist on the Christmas story for the media. So it's just thinking a little bit creatively about what you've got. So rather than just a plain sell, thinking of an angle that will appeal to them. And another really quick win, if you've got a really strong, brilliant image, something like the slide at the bottom with the surfers. This is a blatant plug. I think it's dropped off the bottom, but it's a blatant plug for this urban surfing company. But it's appealed to the picture editor, and he's enjoyed the picture and he's popped it in, and it's just a couple of lines. So if you've got a brilliant image, just send that off to the picture desks with a couple of lines explaining it. And sometimes that can be a really nice, quick hit. And also just thinking about, seasonal hooks. The obvious one is Christmas, but also things like in January, are people either thinking about healthy eating or eating more vegetables, or is there an alternative to, have you got a non-alcoholic gin or whatever it might be? But using seasonal hooks to jump on the back of, and equally, if there's a news story, have sales of home delivery of beer soared. Could you give comment to that? So drop them a quick one-liner and say, we've got a great case study. We are selling much more beer for home delivery than we have over the last year. Get in touch with us and we can tell you more. So it's just using the media as much as you can. As I say, it is a two-way relationship and you can help each other out. The final thing, just to say, if you are a keen blogger and you're good at writing, something like the Food Blogger in the Courier, they feature local food companies quite regularly. They're on rotation, really. So, put yourself forward. It's not paid, but it is good regular exposure, and it gives you a chance to tell your story a bit more on a seasonal basis or whatever it may be. So that's well worthwhile. So if we could move on to social, please, Callum. So social media, everybody here I know uses social, and there's some fantastic things going out there. So again, you'll probably be very familiar on what with some of the things I'm going to touch on. I was just going to touch briefly on some quick wins, both in content and engagement. And we can talk about this in the discussion afterwards if anyone's got particular questions on it. Lockdown has changed the way people use social media, but the advantage is that many more people are using social, but the usual rules about the times of day that are good to post, etc., have gone straight out of the window because 9 to 5 doesn't exist in the same way that it did anymore. What hasn't changed is that people are 4 times more likely to engage with a human story than they are with a brand story. And also the rise of video. So it's anticipated in the next couple of years, the majority of posts will be video content. So just building up your confidence with that. It's really, you know, I know you all know this, so it's covering ground that you are familiar with, but it's not all about the sell. The social media should be about the storytelling. And we always say that there's a kind of 80-20 rule. So for every post that you're putting out, the hard sell should be 80. You know, there should be 4 other posts that are telling the story. So you're still subliminally telling the story. You're still subliminally selling by telling the story, but it's not that hard sell. People switch off very quickly if it's constant sell, sell, sell. And also just thinking about what channels your audience are on. And I put a slide in later, which we can touch on, but you'll all be very aware that Instagram is the visual one. It's brilliant for food and drink companies. You get lots coming across from that. And then the Facebook tends to be more friends and family, and Twitter tends to be more business orientated opinions and thought leadership. So it's just having a think about what your customers are likely to be using and where you're best to be seen. So the likes of again, suggesting that you use content, a piece of content that you've got, and where is the best place to put that? And it may be in various different places. So if you've got a short film clip, you're going to put it to music and make it a reel on Instagram. And reels are really, they've been transposed from TikTok, but they're really popular, and music is very emotive. It gets people going, especially as you can use music that people are familiar with. So it could be that you make film clips into reels, or just run it as a normal post. And also if you've got much longer content, IGTV, which is Instagram TV, is working really well for people now. So it posts briefly on your page, and then you can put up to 10 minutes on IGTV. So it's a great way of telling the longer story. So it could be a tour, it could be a cookery demonstration, but it's a really nice way of telling the long form. Stories are brilliant. You'll all be familiar with stories, but what's fantastic about Facebook and Instagram stories is that they sit at the top of the page. So even if your followers are not seeing your posts, it is likely, particularly if they engage with you regularly, it's likely that your stories will pop up at the top of the page. And the advantage of stories is also that you can superimpose them with text, so you can add a bit of personality and tell your story, and you can put a number of images in there, so you can talk about your day and all the different crazy things that have gone on. But again, it's a way of engaging your audience just slightly differently and giving them a different view, but it's definitely worth doing them fairly regularly just to keep that engagement going. The other thing is that for Instagram particularly, the image that you put on, we always say that the image that you post needs to be perfect. The images for stories can be perfect now, so they might be funny or different or not as brilliant visually, but they work really well for 24 hours that they're up in terms of telling a story. Live video is increasingly popular. Facebook Live, Caroline Miller, we've just been talking about, she did an amazing thing over the summer with Go Rural and live tours, and got huge amounts of engagement. The great advantage about doing Facebook Lives is that people can ask questions at the time. They feel that they're really involved. So it's definitely something worth considering if you're confident in doing that. You do need to do lots of pre-marketing to make sure that you get people to come along. It does sit on your page afterwards, but really you want as many people on the live session as possible. And then polls. Twitter used to be the leader in polls, but Instagram and Facebook are now doing polls quite a lot. And again, it's a fun way. You can do it through your stories, but it's either you can do something fun and humorous just to perk people up and get some engagement, or it's quite a good way of doing some customer research. You know, shall I do a turkey pie for Christmas, or does beer can you drink beer before 12 o'clock, or I don't know what it might be, but, you know, just it's a yes or no answer. And again, it's just a different way of engaging people. As well as engaging people, you've obviously got all this brilliant content. It's trying to reach out to as many people as possible. So expanding beyond your own audience, Facebook ads are really inexpensive, easy way of trying that out. You can select your audience and their interests and their age group. You can also get Facebook just to replicate a similar audience to your followers. So it doesn't cost a lot of money. You can put £10 on it and see how it goes. So that's definitely a good way of expanding your reach. There is also another element that with sort of pay to play, if you advertise, you tend to find that your organic posts on Facebook start getting a bit more traction too and being seen a bit more. So a bit of good timely advertising can help quite a lot. I suppose hashtags as well, just make sure that you're putting hashtags on your customers and likely customers would be searching. So with Instagram, you can do up to 30. You're probably as well doing a third of that with really good ones that are going to bring the right people to your page. And I would, you can always have a little look at your competitors, see what hashtags they're using. There's also a free website called All Hashtag, and you can put in a term and just see what other terms come up from that. But it's something that you can just keep on trialing and giving a go. Facebook groups are getting increasingly popular. If you've got something that's worth, something like Appetite for Angus, obviously, if you have got something that's worth talking about, it is a great way of building community and getting some peer-to-peer endorsement. Uni is a pizza oven maker in Edinburgh. They have 30,000 people in their Facebook group, and they're all talking, waxing lyrical about their different pizzas and how they've put their pizza oven into some fancy bit of garden furniture or whatever it might be. But it is a great way of getting people talking, and they talk within their group and beyond, and you will find that sales go up because everyone's telling everyone else how brilliant things are. If you're not on it already, ladies in the group, I'm afraid we've got some men too, but there is Egg Dundee, which is a great community Facebook group, and you can ask everything from where can I get a plumber to who's doing Christmas hampers. You can also do one business post a month. So it's really worth making sure that you can do that for free. So you can advertise your own business once a month. So it's a great way of reaching a huge amount of women in the Dundee area. And there's also one for Perth as well. And campaigns, jumping on campaigns. So there is an awareness day for every day of the year now. So whether it's Great British Breakfast Week or National Sausage Day or Gin Day, whatever it may be. So just keeping an eye on these campaigns. There are websites. If you Google awareness days, you will find a list of dates, so you can schedule it into anything you're planning, but make the most of those with the right hashtags. And also there's a lovely thing that Ardross Farm Shop did recently called My Shop Life. And it was just, I think it was 7 days in the life of the shop, and they told the stories just beautifully, and some of the very dull stuff that they do every day, which people are fascinated by. So it's a really nice way of storytelling, and it makes you do it every day, and your followers anticipate it just for that short time. So it's a good way of building up engagement. And the other thing is just to like, and you all do this anyway, but like and tag other local businesses and hope that they do the same back to you, but just building that sense of community and sharing your love of other local food and drink businesses with your followers so that they get a look in as well. Just a couple of things to watch out for is that algorithms are very hard to beat. So this is what's happening on Facebook. How do you make sure that your posts are being seen by your followers? They make it harder and harder, as I say. They want to monetize it. So often, advertising does help. The one thing they really do look for is genuine, authentic engagement. So the more likes and shares that you get on any posts, the more they like it. So try and think of content that's going to engage your audience and what they might like. And, don't be shy to ask questions or put something up humorous that just makes people giggle. It can be slightly away from your brand as long as it's still something that is sort of in line with your ethos. Try and avoid putting links that take you away from Facebook. So quite often you might put in a website or your own website. It is better actually just to tell people go to our website just because Facebook doesn't really like things that take away from their page. So just avoiding that. And then, as I said earlier, just thinking about Facebook advertising just to make sure you keep in with the organic posts, get some exposure as well. So I think if we can go to the next one, please, Callum. So e-newsletters, we are inundated, as we all know, by emails, as I said, about journalists, but also our inboxes are the same, and it can be, it's easy to think that actually an e-newsletter will just get lost with everything else, but actually you can build great community through e-newsletters, and it's a really good way to build your story and build a very strong engagement. But you do have to add value. You have to do something that makes them want to click open when it comes. So it's thinking really hard about your customers and what they enjoy. And it might not be all about you. It could be about other local businesses. You could do nice recipes or gin mixers, something that makes them interested and they want to look at it, because you are competing with an awful lot of noise. These are a few newsletters on the left of people who build community just brilliantly, and they create a lifestyle that you want to be part of. And it just makes you smile when you open their newsletters, and that's what you're trying to create. And it is really worth trying to doing that and thinking. It doesn't have to be that. I mean, it could be monthly, it could be quarterly, but just something that you share with your audience. Again, it goes back to the 80-20 rule. If you can, maybe have two different newsletters, one that is the storytelling and then one which is the hard sell, and maybe make them distinct in how they're set up. MailChimp is a brilliant free tool for newsletters. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but it's got very easy templates to follow. It also allows you to monitor who's opening, how many people are opening, what links they're clicking on, so that you know quite quickly what's working and what's not, and you can build on that. So, just constantly iterating and changing. The newsletter used to be given to the junior in the office. I would suggest that you spend time on it, you curate it, you think quite hard about it, because it's a really powerful, when it works, it's a really powerful mode of communication with your audience. So yeah, you give it time and go back to it and tweak it. The book at the bottom, Do Open, I have suggested, if you are thinking about newsletter, I highly recommend it. It's part of the Do Lectures, which is a festival of ideas held on a farm in Wales. They are just some interesting thinkers. They have a range of people that they've asked to write books for them. But David Hyatt's backstory, I'm not going to go into it just now, is really interesting, but well worth having a look at. Right, Callum, I must be on the countdown, but I'll quickly go through this last slide. So other channels, most people use social media for their information now. Websites are getting they're losing traction in many ways, but it is really important. Customers, particularly if you've got an order page, will still be going to your website, and it is your shop window, so keep it fresh. But also the other advantage is that in terms of Google ratings, people like Google really likes websites that are having new content put on regularly. So it's good, especially if you're doing a blog, it's ideal because that kind of ticks both boxes. It keeps content fresh and it shows Google that you're keeping everything up to date. So make sure you've got lots of great keywords on there, which help the search rate engine with search engines as well. Podcasting and YouTube, if you are a confident broadcaster, these are free ways of reaching audiences in a different way. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium, and I think during lockdown, every man and his dog has set up a podcast. If you've got something interesting to say, it's well worth it. And some people are so well suited. I've heard some brilliant people coming out of the woodwork and podcasting. It's not expensive to get set up. The kit is not expensive, and you can do it even over Zoom. What I would suggest, if you're interested in it, is putting yourself forward to be interviewed by podcasters as well. There's plenty of people in both the rural and the food space talking about small food companies. So if you've got a good story, contact them and suggest that you could be interviewed. YouTube is a great place. You can monetize it, obviously, if you get really professional about it, but it's also a good place just to host how-to videos, maybe some behind the scenes tours, etc. And you can always use that content. You can always link back to it from both social and from your newsletters going forward, so it can be used and reused. And collaboration, again, you're all doing this brilliantly, and we're confined to not going out at the moment, but just thinking about how you can do fun things together. Is it a cheese and gin evening, or is it pies and beer or something? But as well as collaborating physically, you're doing it online as well. And I popped this post from Burger King because we never really thought we'd see Burger King endorsing McDonald's, but actually in times like this sense of solidarity and generosity actually goes a long way to how people talk about you and your brand. So it's putting out that olive branch is a really good thing to do. And then free tools, we can touch on any of these if people want more information, but Hootsuite is a scheduling tool, so you can put all of your social channels on there and schedule them at the beginning of the week rather than thinking every day, what am I going to say, or every couple of days. It also helps you to think strategically about perhaps that kind of 80-20 content and about hooking into awareness days, etc. Canva is a sort of free graphics tool, really. You can make some nice social media posts, you can make marketing material, headers for your website, so you can upload your own images and use various fonts and other tools from there. SurveyMonkey, if you are, your customers are by very much the best source of information, and going out and asking them what they think is really valuable. SurveyMonkey is quick and easy to set up, and you can get some good info. All hashtag, as we discussed, is just if you want some hashtags. There's various other similar things, but it just gives you something to get going with. And MailChimp, as I say, is brilliant for e-newsletters and very intuitive. And then I think we're on to the final one. So yeah, it's really just to maximize on your content. If you're producing something for social, can you put that in the media? Can you put that in your e-newsletter, or vice versa? If you're putting it in your newsletter, could that make a nice social media post? So think about all the different ways it could go out, and within those channels as well, which platforms, could it be a poll? Could it be an Instagram post or a story? Think about quality, not quantity. Don't put things out just for the sake of it. And build your tribe. This is very much, building your audience. Think about what they love. If you love it, the chances are they will too. You're not going to please everybody, so just please those that are really going to get you and enjoy what you're doing, and communicate through all these channels with them. And as I say, you're not putting big budgets to this, so just keep an eye on what's working and what's not, and constantly iterate and change and adapt, and collaborate. Just work with each other, work with other people online, work with other businesses. They may not even be in your industry, but see how you can work together so that you can do some cross marketing and reach new audiences. So, and that was just maybe for reference afterwards. That's really just what the main key points are of the social media, and I think probably most of you know that, but it's just to give a quick synopsis of that.
Thank you, Susanna. That's fantastic, and I'm sure there's many people with questions. I've certainly got a question, but before we open it up, I'd like to move over to our second guest speaker, which is Fiona Richmond from Scotland Food and Drink.
Hi there, thanks very much, Callum. Well, I'm just going to say a few words and then just about a few sort of examples of storytelling that I've kind of come across, but we could actually talk about that all night. But I've got lots of questions for you as well, Susanna. That was really great. And I think, I've certainly found that over the last few months, some businesses have really come into their own with their social media and their communications. I suppose because they've really had to, they've been forced into a position where they have to obviously do things differently. They have to keep in front of mind of their customers and really keep that following. So there's been a lot of great successes along those lines. You mentioned Ardross Farm Shop, and I know they've been, really, really busy over the past few months. But their communication has been, fantastic, and you feel really connected with that family and you want to support them. So a lot to learn from them as well. So storytelling and how you tell your story is obviously a really big subject and crosses many different kinds of platforms. This is probably more kind of relevant to you know, to restaurants and the food service trade, because we're always really interested in encouraging businesses to do more to tell the story of their producers. And you know, it'd be, you know, good to sort of to hear how you feel about how businesses tell your story. So if your product is on the shelf of a farm shop, you know, do people know the story behind it? If it's on a menu, do customers actually know what they're enjoying? Do they know where it's from? And are the staff trained, you know, to do your product justice? So I certainly know that if somebody who serves me is, you know, can point something out and can tell you a little bit about that product, you know, it makes that taste even more special, and you're motivated to find out a bit more about that business. Some supplier maps, we've seen, you know, a lot of good examples around that. One of my sort of favourite businesses is Cranachan and Crowdy in Edinburgh. Does anybody know it or supply it? It's actually one of the few places you can go, and there's 100% Scottish produce in there across food and drink primarily, but also craft. And what this makes this business stand out, and obviously they're going through a really tough time just now because there's nobody around the Royal Mile. This is just off the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. Beth and Fiona, the owners, are absolutely evangelical about knowing the story of every single product on that shelf. So you can be guaranteed that if you go in there and, you know, you want to know about something, they will know, because they take the time to find out, and they build up really, really close relationships with their suppliers. And you can't really see very clearly here, but they have a fantastic map that just keeps growing and growing about all the suppliers that they work with. And it's always a great point of interest for visitors who, you know, who take photos of it and, you know, really want to, you know, look at, especially if you're an international visitor, you want to, you know, look at, you know, where that product is from in the country. So they're starting to open their doors again now, and it'll be interesting to see how, you know, they get on over the coming months. But they're really, really adept at, you know, telling the story. And it's not easy to do that, because the best person to tell the story is yourself. But if you can get people, great ambassadors like Fiona and Beth from this shop, then I think that will do your product, you know, a lot of justice. The one at the bottom is actually from Donegal, and this might be particularly relevant to Angus, because I know you've got plans to do food trails and things like that. This is a photo from a restaurant in Letterkenny in the Donegal coast, and this is part of an initiative called the Donegal Food Coast. Has anybody been at all? No? It's a really, really interesting example to look at, and it was started a few years ago, spearheaded really by the local enterprise agency, and it's essentially it's a trail, with much more substance behind it, and the aim of the initiative was to put Donegal Coast on the map to promote and develop food and drink experiences. So on this map are, you know, producers and restaurants and different kinds of food tourism experiences. But behind that is a huge amount of support to help businesses grow, to make sure that all the businesses on that map and as part of this coastal initiative are telling a shared story. So if you go into a restaurant or a business who's on that map, there'll be a logo, a Donegal Food Coast logo. And what the Letterkenny restaurant are doing here is, by showing this map, which is the map of all the Donegal Food Coast producers, they're there to talk about the suppliers that they work with from that region. So they have these suppliers on their menu, and on their menus as well, they talk about the initiative. And they talk about the suppliers. There's also some really lovely photographs of the suppliers in the restaurant. So that's, you know, one of the best examples I've actually come across, and I think that shared story across the region is really, really powerful. So it might be worth actually sending the link around afterwards, because it's quite a good one to look at. On the right spread, I just wanted to mention this because this is one of our former colleagues who left Scotland Food and Drink in the summer. She was a graduate working on a project with Brakes to drive Scottish sourcing, and she sets up her own business, basically charcuterie and cheese boxes, and sourced by pretty much 100% Scottish suppliers. We're really proud of her. She's just in her 20s, really entrepreneurial. She's got a nice little video on her website. She talks about suppliers. She has a supplier map on her website. But on each box, there's a a lovely tag with this map and a list of all the suppliers on the back. So a really simple thing to do, but it's very often overlooked. And so yeah, we're really proud of what Hannah has done with that business and to promote Scottish. In the middle, another wonderful business, the Contini family, who own a number of restaurants in Edinburgh. For many years now, they've been really championing Scottish producers, and they have this chalkboard in their restaurant. And throughout lockdown and recent weeks, obviously a very, very difficult time. And Karina, the owner, has been sending quite a heartfelt blog post that she posts on her newsletters every week, and she talks about her suppliers. And you really feel again very connected with her and her business and her family. So another really good example there. Next slide, Callum. Okay, some of these businesses might be familiar to you. The lovely platter at the top is Glenegadale House on Isla. Emma and Graham Clark. They won Visit Scotland Thistle Award last year for most hospitable B&B, but they really do excel at engaging with their customers and telling their family story in a very, very natural way. I certainly, and I know many others, felt like this. We felt that we knew Emma, and we know Emma, before we'd actually ever met face to face, because her social media is very warm. It's very personal. She talks about her family. Her son's just gone off to vet school. She shows the life kind of on the where she lives on the beautiful island and the animals they have around them. And she's again so committed to talking about her suppliers and the sort of love and care that she puts into what she serves her guests. This comes out really, really strongly on social media. It's also very clearly talked about on her website, which has got beautiful imagery on her website and some lovely words about the suppliers. But their social media account it just feel very connected with them. And again, throughout the past few months, when all their ups and downs and trials and tribulations, I think she's probably grown her following even more. Really, really heartfelt, and it's just a nice supportive community, I think, that builds up when you connect with a business like that. Mac and Wild on the right. Does anybody know about Mac and Wild? Anybody heard of them? I'm a huge fan, and I couldn't not mention Andy. Andy Waugh is from Ardguy Game family in the Highlands. But in 2011, I think it was, he decided to, maybe it was just before then, but anyway, he decided to pack his bags and head down to London with some venison. And his mission really was to portray a bit of a different image of Scotland and to show the Londoners what real Highland venison tasted like. He started selling venison in market stalls. He ended up at Borough Market. He sort of took the street food world by storm in London and won a Young British Foodie Award. And from there, he's now built a really great business with his business partner. He has several restaurants in London, all serving his venison from his Highland estate, and lots of other Scottish produce. So he does loads to support Scottish suppliers. And like a couple of years ago now, they opened Falls of Shin in the Highlands. They took that over, sorry. And they're also in Edinburgh next year going to be setting up a really big sort of street food market in the St James's Centre. But if it's worth looking at their website and how the story has developed to be told over the years and all the different stages of Andy's life and his journey. And, there's a really lovely description on the website about, Scotland and the Highlands and the whole ethos of Highland hospitality. The doors are always open. There's always something nice to eat on the stove. And about his whole journey, he talks about to promote better quality meat to customers. And they have some stunning videos. There's one in particular that I really love. It's Andy and his friends surfing in the Highlands. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. And then it's rounded off with eating gorgeous meat and tasting whiskey, and that whole hospitality, warm hospitality comes through. The newsletters are excellent. They're always developing their business. They're now doing restaurant kits at home. They're doing all sorts of different experiences. They're quite an amazing, business. But the storytelling has evolved over the years. But they have, built their business on their story, and they've really stuck to it. And I think a really great, ambassador for Scotland. And then Gilly Bishan on the bottom there with some guests outside. Gilly is a food writer. I always describe her as a hidden gem. She's written probably about 45 books, specialises in Middle Eastern cuisine, in fact. Speaks about 5 languages. She's got an incredible story herself that she has written about extensively. But she organises all sorts of experiences in her home, which is just near the Glenlivet distillery. And she's what I would describe as a natural storyteller. Her own story is very, very, moving. She used to write columns in the Herald years ago. She's written books about her journey. But some of her latest books have really touched on the whole Scottish food and drink scene and hospitality. One of her latest books is called Spirit and Spice, which is a bit of a portrait of a family living in the Highlands. And one of the websites, she's got 2 websites, but one that's worth looking at is spiritandspice.co.uk, where you'll see she tells the story of herself and her son and daughter, who are actually now home. They're sort of global adventurers who do some amazing things, and they're home with her doing fish skinning and goodness knows what. And foraging tours and pickling and preserving, some really fascinating experiences. And Gilly also does her own podcast series, which is worth looking at. And she's got a very soothing voice and tells some really great and really, really interesting stories. So that's a podcast that I think is really worth looking at. So, I mean, all these businesses, they tell their stories in different ways. But as you can probably tell, I get quite enthusiastic about these businesses, and that's because what they do is and how they tell the story just makes you warm to them. You want to know them, you want to follow them, and you sort of invest in them and their brand. Gilly's Instagram is also good. She was very scared of social media for a long time. She's been doing food writing for long before it became social media was ever in existence. But Instagram I think has really developed for her, and she posts beautiful images of the Highlands and the produce around there. So lots to discuss when we have our chat afterwards, but we can certainly send some links of some good examples with the email tomorrow.
Absolutely, thank you very much, Fiona. That's brilliant, and some amazing businesses and stories to tell. I think something that sort of comes out there for me is having the confidence to tell your story. A lot of businesses, as you've just said, Fiona, a lot of businesses come on a long journey, and they've got a fantastic story to tell, but they often think, well, no one's really interested. Who cares? But actually, it resonates with so many people. And as you just described, so yeah, absolutely brilliant. And we will share the links to these businesses tomorrow.